Hello, my name is Bethany Mathews, and my topic is Equality for Animals, Chapter 33 by Peter Singer. Now, the author talks a lot about this principle called equal consideration of interests. And really, what this means is it's how we come up with decisions when we're looking at a situation and we have different points of value that lead us to make a certain decision. Now, this is really the principle of equal consideration of interests. And when Singer talks about this, he explains how we view animals on a lesser degree than we do humans. And he goes through explaining why we do this and through different examples. And what he wants us to understand through this is that the principle of equal consideration of interest should be based on suffering, not intellect. And more times than not, we make this decision based on how smart we think someone is, or how capable, or their wealth, something that they have, we then give them more interest or they have more weight in our decisions. But what Singer is saying here is that that should not be the case. And when we tie that into animals, that's why we view them at such a lower level. And that should not be what we do, because we should be viewing and establishing our decisions based on suffering, not intellect. When we look at animals, they can feel pain. And Singer explains this through behavior. When a little kid falls down and scrapes their knee, their behavior helps us indicate that they feel pain. And the same is true with an animal. If they run into an electric fence, we can see based on their behavior that it hurt them. They didn't continue through the fence because the fence shocked them and caused them pain, deterring them from leaving. So we now understand that both humans and animals have this pain, and that is how we should be making our decisions off of, at least in the sense of the principle of equal consideration of interests. When we look at another example, we can look at that babies and horses, they both feel pain, but the difference between them is that a horse feels pain on a lesser degree potentially than a baby. And Singer uses the example of if you were to slap a baby, it would hurt them a lot more than if you were to slap a horse on its behind, because it has thicker skin, therefore can endure a greater amount of pain. And so when we look at these things, we place the priority on relieving the greater suffering. So that is something to take into account as well. Singer urges us to take care when we compare the interests of other species as the baseline. Now, when we look at the second premise, we look at some other aspects that Singer incorporates, like natural order or social Darwinism. And he explains this as sometimes when people look at equality for animals, they take into account that we're just following the natural order of things. But when Singer uses the example that when we are potentially, if we were out in the wilderness and hunting an animal was our only source of survival to eat, then that would be one thing. But he is talking about the factory work, the mass production of animals, and that is done for our taste, for our instant pleasure. It's not something that we need for specific nutritional needs, or it's not what we can fulfill those nutritional needs from other things. And Singer even uses the example of the grains that we give to the animals, fattening them up so that we can eat them. We could be eating those grains ourselves and providing us with just as much nutritional value. So we have to look at those things as well. And he says, just because something is natural doesn't mean it is right or above improvement. So he uses the example of pregnancy. When a woman gets pregnant, that is a natural order to things, but we have birth control. So we are altering the natural order of something. Is that wrong? That is something that we do. So how can we say that, animals us eating animals is just social Darwinism, survival of the fittest, So when we look at that example of pregnancy, we see that it's a natural order, yet we still have, things that detour that. So looking at another example with experiments, we use animals for experimentation a lot. And the idea here is that if we use animals for experiments to determine how humans would react to the same treatment, how can we question the similarities between us, or at least the aspect of suffering? If we can give a treatment or a drug to an animal and expect and use their behavior or the reactions that their body has as an understanding for how humans will react, there has to be a significant similarity there, and we can't deny that they still feel those same qualities. So to place their rights on a completely different level begs the question. Now, when we look at the thesis statement here, it's really, Singer does not want to, he wants to make sure that we're not trying to diminish the rights of other people, or when he uses an example a lot about intellectually disabled humans. And if we were to look at intellect and how we decided that suffering should be used as a basis instead of intellect for the principle, we have to understand that that doesn't mean that intellectually disabled humans should have lesser rights just because we're comparing those to animal rights. So the main thing that Singer wants to establish is he's really shooting for increasing the value of animal rights at the same level as intellectually disabled humans, but at the same time not lowering the level of rights that intellectually disabled humans have either. So he's just trying to create this awareness and ask the questions of why do we view it this way, and this is why we should view it in another way, which views animal rights at a higher level. For my example, that to tie this into my own personal life, I couldn't help but think about, I recently went horseback riding, and it really, this whole concept of equal suffering has really helped me understand what that horse went through and how I saw it beforehand, which was when we were going through the trail, if the horse was tired, they needed water. I would need water if I was tired going through the trail. If the horse ran up the hill, he needed a break to catch his breath. I would need the same thing. And if the horse was tired after the long trail, then he would need a break out of the sun. And that's exactly what I would want. So when we view the behavior of how a lot of humans react, we can see a lot of similarities between each other. And then it also made me think of the meat factories and how I eat meat multiple times a week. But this article has helped me think and ask deeper questions about the effects of my actions and what my specific decisions play a role into using meat and supporting these factories. Tying this into one of the theories that we looked at during this course, I will tie this into the utilitarian theory with John Stuart Mill. And I always remember this best through the brick wall metaphor, and that is that we are all individual bricks, but we all make up the wall. And we want to make sure that we are supporting the wall once we understand that concept, because that is, society, and that provides so many different things that we enjoy, and we have to rely on each other in order to succeed at the level that we do. And that includes animals. And so when we look at this theory and, include animals in that understanding, they play a role in so many areas of our lives. And so when we look at animals, we have to value their rights and their living conditions and all of the above, because they are part of the brick wall as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my presentation. Please leave me some questions and I'll be happy to answer them.